Hello good people and welcome back. So in this video what we're going to do is start with unit 3, and that is on hedging strategies using futures. Now we remember in the earlier videos we said that we could use derivative instrument for a few reasons for hedging. So hedge, we could use that for speculation, or we could use those for arbitrage. Those were the users of derivative instruments that we recognize so far. And so in this unit, what we're going to be using as looking at is this first option, and that's hedging. And we also talked about the type of contracts that we can look at. We said we could look at futures, forward, swaps, and options. Now, first we're going to look at hedging only, but we're going to look at hedging in the context of futures and forward for that matter. Now, these two, futures and forward, you remember that they serve the same purpose, right? The lock-in today, a sale or a purchase that's going to happen at some point in the future at a given price. And it becomes an obligation once we get into that agreement. The difference between futures and forward is that forwards are traded on the OTC market and futures are traded on exchanges, and futures are standardized, whereas forwards are not standardized at all. They're customizable. Futures are mark to market, forwards are not mark to market. There's an exchange clearinghouse, there is a central bank counterparty here, and so on and so forth. So those are the differences between futures and forward, but typically they are valued in the same way because they achieve the same goal. And so in this video series, or in this unit, we will be looking at hedging using futures contract. And again, hedging only. So we're going to start the discussion with why would we decide to hedge, right? Why would we even think about hedging? And hedging is a process that allows for us to minimize risk or even eliminate risk altogether if we could. So we imagine the scenario of a farmer who this is the farmer that we have, who is planning a harvest at some point in the future. So the farmer is going to be harvesting at this point in the future and then selling whatever it is that the farmer gets. So let's say it has corn. So the farmer is going to be harvesting corn and plans on selling later on. This farmer has no idea what the price of corn is going to be at this point in the future. Price of corn may be high, in which case that works, or price of corn may be low, in which case the farmer loses. And so for the farmer, the goal is really just to lock in a sale today at the specified price. And so the farmer may want to get into a futures contract that's going to guarantee a sale somewhere in between. Not too high, not too low, at the fair price for the farmer, so that the farmer is satisfied, but also that guarantees the sale. So there's uncertainty with respect to the price of corn, but there's also uncertainty with respect to the ability of the farmer to make that sale at some point in the future. And hedging allows the farmer to take away that uncertainty and in turn guarantee that future price. And so if you're going to do that, you're going to have to choose what to do, what approach to take. You could either take a long position in the forward or take a short position. And so this is the key here in this unit. It is being able to recognize what kind of position it is that you need to take. Typically, a long futures hedge is appropriate when you know you will be purchasing the asset in the future and you want it to lock in the price today. So you take a long position if in the real world you want to purchase the asset. So today I take a long position in the futures market if sometime in the future I plan to buy the underlying. So if I want to buy and the price of the underlying or the asset in the future is uncertain and I want to lock in the price today, the proper strategy is to take a long futures position or create a long future hedge. Now, on the other hand, if I'm planning to sell, right? If I'm planning to sell the underlying at some point in the future, so if I want to sell in the future here, what I want to do is I want to take a short futures position, because the short future position guarantees that sale in the future at the specified price, whereas the long futures position guarantees that purchases at some point in the future at the specified price. So a short future hedge is appropriate when you know you will sell an asset, or the underlying asset in this case, in the future, and you want to lock in the price today. That is uncertainty that you want to hedge against. That uncertainty is with respect to the price of the underlying, and that's what you want to minimize, the risk that you want to minimize. That's why you would engage in this hedge. Next, what we're going to do is look at the advantages or the argument in favor of hedging. Well, what this says is that companies should focus on the main business. That's the key. The company should specialize on what it does best, its main business. However, in addition to that, to what they do best, companies should also take, companies should also take the steps in order to minimize the risk. And where would those risks come from? Well, the risk may come from changes in interest rate, exchange rates, and other market variables. So commodity prices, for example. And the way you would think about it is if a company understands that they have to purchase the raw material for the goods and services that they're offering, and that the price on that raw material changes quite a bit, it only makes sense that the company works towards minimizing the risk of paying too much for that raw material. And so that is one of the essential arguments in favor of hedging. It is, why wouldn't you want to minimize the risk of changes in the value of your raw material, or changes in the value or in the cost of capital? In this case, cost of capital will be the interest rates. And so you remember that in financial management, you were told that the goal of management is to maximize shareholders' wealth. And so if company can work in a way that minimize those costs, those future costs, and therefore increase the bottom line of the organization, hence hedging, why shouldn't they do so? They should indeed do what they do best, focus on the main business of the organization, but in addition, they should take the steps in order to minimize the risk. That is the argument in favor of hedging. Now, there are also arguments against hedging. Although we're told that the goal of management is to maximize shareholders' wealth, those shareholders are also assumed to be well diversified. We're also saying that diversification is something that shareholders should focus on. And every investor out there should hold a very well diversified portfolio of assets. And so implicitly what this means is that it doesn't matter if the firm diversifies, because the investor, the shareholder, is already diversified. And so the shareholders should be the one managing that risk. The firm itself should leave that risk up to the shareholders to manage. And so that is what this says. It says shareholders are usually well diversified and can make their own hedging decision. You own the firm, and therefore within your portfolio, you should be managing the risk. The firm itself shouldn't be managing the risk. The investor should be managing the risk. A counter argument to this is also the fact that the big assumption here is that shareholders are well diversified. We know that's not always the case. Another argument is that shareholders know how to manage the risk, hedge the risk of their portfolio. That's not always the case. So although the understanding is, well, the firm should not do that, because should not engage in hedging strategies, because the shareholders does that anyway. The shareholder is diversified. There's a problem with that line of reasoning, because shareholders are not always diversified, and shareholders are not always technically savvy enough to understand what they need to do in order to hedge the risk of your portfolios. Another argument against hedging, should have my highlighter there, against hedging is that hedging may actually increase the risk to hedge when the competitors do not hedge. And the idea is that by hedging, you may actually be increasing the risk of your position if your competition does not go along with similar hedge, right? And we'll see an example of that in a little bit. I think this approach, this point here is best observed with an example. We'll look at an example here in a second. A final argument against hedging is the idea that explaining a situation where there is a loss on the hedge and again on the line can be extremely difficult. Well, let's say you place a hedge, let's say you place a short hedge. You want to sell, and today you want to sell at some point in the future, and today you lock in a price of that future sale. That's a short hedge, right? So today you enter in a short hedge, and you say that in the future you're going to be selling at a price. That price, we know that price is a futures price. Let's say the futures price is $100. You lock in that price, and you have 1,000 pound of the underlying that you're selling. You're going to sell the 1,000 pound for $100, so you're going to get 100,000. You're going to get 100,000 for that underlying in the future. That's what the future contract says. That's locked in. However, it turns out that at maturity here, the true price of the underlying is maybe 150. In this case, you could have sold at 150 and you could have made 150,000, but because you hedge, you are only making 100,000. So it is sometimes hard to explain why you would hedge and only make 100,000 where you could be making 150. However, without the hedge, and let's say you did not have a hedge in place, and the price of gold, the price of the underlying went to say $80 instead of 100, you could also have lost some. You could, if the hedge was not in place, you could have been at 80,000 instead of 100,000, right? So if there is no hedge and the price falls, you would lose. If there is no hedge and the price increase, you would gain. But placing a hedge first guarantees you a price, reduces the uncertainty against the uncertainty with respect to the change in the value of the underlying, and also locks in that future sale for you in the future. And so that is the goal here. Always remember that when you're thinking about a hedge, the goal is not to make a profit per se. The goal is to minimize risk. Now, what we're going to do next is work on a couple of examples with the long hedge and the short hedge, and we're going to generalize those examples in the next couple of slides. So let's look at the example here next. To do that, we're going to go to our board. All right, so first example is January 15, a copper fabricator. So we're in January 15, and a copper fabricator will require 100,000 pounds of copper, and he's going to require that on May 15. And so let's do this. Let's have a map of this. We are January 15. So this is going to be our January 15. I'm going to write that better here. There we go. January 15. And sometime in May, on May 15, we're going to require 100,000 pounds of copper. So this is May. January 15 is today. May is that point in the future. In May, we will need 100,000 pounds of copper. So in May, what we really want to do is we want to buy 100,000 pounds of copper. Now, in the actual market, we need to buy. And in order to buy in the actual market, and in order to hedge a future purchase in the actual market, what we need to do is we need to take a long futures position today, because the long futures position today is going to allow us to lock in today the price at which we're going to purchase copper in May. And so today is January 15, and today the spot price of copper is $3.4 per pound. That is, today's price, I'm going to call that S0, is $3.4 per pound. The May futures price, that is the price at which you would pay copper in May if you enter into a futures contract, is going to be equal to $3.2. So it's going to be, the May futures is called that F0, is going to be equal to 3.2. Actually, let's call that F1. $3.2 per pound. So the first question that we have here is, one, what kind of position do we need to take if we need to hedge against the price, the change in value of the copper in May? Well, if the price of copper is going to change in May, what we want to do is we want to guarantee that we're going to purchase, and we want to guarantee a price that we want to purchase. So our first step is going to be to take a long futures position, and that long futures position is going to be a long May futures position, because we want to purchase in May. Okay, so that's the first step. We want to take a long futures position. The second step is how many contracts do we need? Well, here we told that the contract size, remember, it's a futures contract, and futures contracts are standardized, and so the contract size on futures is for 25,000 pounds. Well, we need 100,000 pounds, and each contract is for 25,000 pounds. And so if we divide the 100,000 by 25,000, what we're going to get is 4, and that is going to be 4 contracts. So we need 100,000 pounds. That's what we need. Each contract is for 25,000. That makes 4 contracts that we're going to take long position on. So we need to take a long position in 4 futures contract. That's our first step. The second step is to say, well, what happens in May? Well, before we think about what happens in May, we want to remember a couple of things. One, we want to remember that we're working with futures. And so what happens with futures that we have is, two, we have the convergence property of futures contract that says that at expiration or at maturity, the futures price is going to be equal to the spot price. And you remember that chart that we had there, right? That chart looked something like this, where on the one hand we had a futures price that behaved something like that, and we also had a spot price that behaved something like this. But ultimately at maturity we had the futures price, that was our futures price, is exactly equal to our spot price, and that was our spot price. And that spot price is the price at which the market, the price at which the underlying is trading on the market or selling on the market. So that's the first thing we want to remember. One, we're working with futures price, and because we're working with the futures, that convergence property holds in that at expiration, the futures price is going to be equal to the spot price. That's the assumption that we're making here. Now, we also want to remember that usually or typically futures contracts do not lead to delivery. And that's the discussion that we had last time, right? In one of the earlier videos. Futures contracts are usually closed out before maturity of the contract in order to avoid delivery. So the idea here is you're going to take a long position in the futures contract, and right before maturity or expiration of the contract, what you're going to do, you're going to take the opposite position. So you're going to take a short position to close out that futures contract, and you're going to turn around and reconcile your gain or loss in the future market, add that to your in purchase, if you will, the underlying out in the market, in the physical market. That is the idea. The idea here is that you want to close out your position necessarily at expiration. And we're going to see how that works. Now, if we want to remember our principle, this is what we had, right? We had a scenario where we said, I am an investor, I take a long futures, and in order for me to do that, I need to reach out to my broker, and my broker is going to reach out to the clearinghouse. The broker is going to take a long position with the clearinghouse on my behalf. The clearinghouse is the middleman, so the clearinghouse is also going to take a long position with a third party broker. So that's another broker here, and we had another gentleman here. I don't know who this guy is. All I know is I entered into a long futures position and I asked my broker to enter into a long futures position, and my broker did that with respect with the clearinghouse or the exchange clearinghouse. And so before maturity, because I don't want to take a delivery of the line, I'm going to get out in the market and purchase it directly anyway. What's going to happen is I'm going to ask my broker to take another position, a short one this time, and my broker is going to do that with the exchange, a short one. And by taking a short position, I've effectively canceled the long position that I had with the exchange. That closes out that contract that I had, the long position that I had. And so this is the mechanic that we're relying on. We're relying on the mechanic, on the idea that one, prices are going to converge at maturity, and two, we're going to close out that position. And if price converge in maturity, the price at which I'm going to close out the position is going to be the spot price, which is the actual price of the underlying out in the market. So let's take this scenario. Let's say this price or copper price in May is equal to $3.25. If the price of copper in May is $3.25, what is my position in May? Well, remember that what I had was a long futures position, and my long future position said I was going to purchase copper in May at the futures price, and that futures price was given here. That futures price, the May futures price was $3.20, and I had 4 contracts. Those were the 4 contracts. And so what do we ultimately have? So in May, what's going to happen is I'm going to close out the position. So I'm taking a long position today, which means that my initial step was to pay $3.20, right, per pound. That is my initial position. That's what I was going to do in May. But because I'm closing out the contract, I'm going to take a short position, which means I'm going to be selling copper of the same size in May. Now, if I'm going to take the short position in May, that short position is going to come in May at the spot price in May. What is that spot price in May? $3.25. So if I'm selling, I'm going to be receiving. So I'm receiving $3.25. So I took a long position to pay $3.20. That is the first contract that I asked my broker to make. And in May, in order to close out a position, I take a short position in May. But how do I know the price at which I'm taking that short position? I rely on the convergence property that says that the futures price at expiration, that is May, is going to be equal to the spot price in May. And so I know that that futures price is going to be equal to the spot price in May, which is going to be equal to $3.25. So the short position that I'm taking here, this short position, I know that is going to be at a price of $3.25. That's why I'm adding $3.25 here, because I am selling copper that is short in May for $3.25. What this does is it closes out my position in the futures market. But then I still have to purchase copper, right? Because this closes out my position. I didn't take delivery of the underlying. I still need the underlying. For me to acquire the underlying, I have to get out in the market and actually purchase copper. And so the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to get out in the market and purchase copper. And the copper is currently selling in the market for $3.25, which means that I'm going to pay another $3.25. And so ultimately, what is the net effect of all of this? Well, the net effect is the following. I had a position of $3.20. That was my long. And I closed out at $3.25. That is a plus here because I took a short. Ultimately, my contract, my futures contract, gave me a profit of 25 cents, 5 cents, so 0.05. But then I have to get out in the market and purchase at $3.25, which means that I'm spending $3.25, so minus $3.25. So ultimately, I've only spent $3.20. So ultimately, my price overall is going to be of $3.20. This is my futures position. That is gone because I took a long initially, and then I took a short at the same price at which the underlying is trading in the market. That means I closed out my futures position. By closing out my futures position, I do not get the underlying. Remember, I'm hedging because I need the underlying. So the profit that I make on my futures position comes here and helps me reduce the cost of the underlying out in the market, which is $3.25, and ultimately it reduces that cost for me to $3.20. Now, let's take the opposite scenario, and let's say the price of copper instead was not $3.25, but the price of copper was $3.05. So let's say the price of copper changed. In May, it's not $3.25 anymore. It is now $3.05 in May. So in May, if the price of copper is of $3.05, what's going to happen? Well, remember the steps? The first step is we took a long position. What was the long? Minus $3.20. That's what we had to pay per the contract. We're closing out the position in May, and we're going to be closing out the position at a price, and that price is going to be equal to the spot price in May. Now, that spot price in May is $3.05. And in order to close out the position, remember that's a long, we need to take a short. And so that short is going to be bringing in $3.05. So our position here is going to be closed out here, and it's going to be closed out with a loss this time, and it's going to be closed out, and our loss is going to be of what's that, minus 20 cents. Oh, is that 20 cents? No, yes, 15 cents. Right? I'm spending $3.20. I'm getting back $3.05. So my loss is essentially 15 cents per pound. Now, in addition to that, I still have to get out in the market and purchase copper, right? Because by closing out my position here, I have not received delivery of the underlying. So I can go out to my supplier, my usual supplier, and say, well, I still want copper. And my supplier is going to turn around and say, well, the price of copper right now is at $3.05. So I'm going to spend another $3.05. And by spending the $3.05, ultimately I'm spending $3.20. So that is my price. What do we learn here? The price of copper increased to $3.25. And with the $3.25, because I placed a hedge, my ultimate price was $3.20. And on the other scenario, the price of copper reduced, but because I placed a hedge, my ultimate price is also $3.20. That is what hedging does. Hedging makes sure that we lock in a price. We know exactly how much we're going to pay, no matter what the price of the underlying is going to be in the future. No matter that it is $3.25 or it's $3.05, that doesn't matter. We know that at maturity, we're going to be paying about $3.20. That price is firm, is fixed. We don't need to know that it is going to be $3.20. Then, what we need to know is that we've locked in the price of copper, and that price of copper is exactly equal to that futures price that we had here, $3.20. No matter what the value of the underlying does at expiration. That is an example of a long futures hedge. Now, let's look at another example for the short one. Well, for this short one, I'm going to put all the details here for us to look at. Now, we know it's going to be a short hedge, so let's think about it carefully. On May 15, an oil producer contract sells 1 million barrels of crude oil. The price in the sales contract is the spot price on August 15. So we know that on August 15, we're going to be selling at whatever it is that the underlying is selling. That's what it is, the spot price here on August 15. The May 15 spot price, that's the price in May, is going to be $60 per barrel. So what do we have? We have a scenario where we are in May and we want August. Now, it is we're going to be selling, right? We want to sell 1 million barrels of oil in August. And so in order to sell in August, what we need to do is we need to take a short hedge, right? We need to take a short position in the futures contract. So we need to take a short futures, the short August futures. So today in May, we take a short position in crude oil. That is going to lock in the price of oil in August. That price we just told is going to be the August price. Now, the August futures is going to be at $59 per barrel. So what we do is we take a short futures position at $59 per barrel. The hedging strategy for us is, of course, because it is a strategy to sell in the actual market, we're going to take a short futures. We're going to sell it in August, so we're going to take a 1,000 August futures contract. The reason we're taking 1,000 August futures contract is because each contract is of a size that's going to make 1 million barrel be sold with the 1,000 futures contract. So each contract in this case is going to be worth 1,000 barrels, right? So we need to sell 1 million barrels, and each contract is for 1,000, which means that we need 1,000 contracts. And that's what we have here, 1,000 contracts. In August, just like with the long futures, we're going to close out our position. And we're going to close our position in August at the futures price in August. So what do we have? We are shorting, which means we will be selling. The first scenario is, what if the price of oil in August is actually 55? Well, if the price of oil in August is going to be 55, what are we going to have? Well, remember the steps. The first step is we take a short. By taking a short position, we lock in the price, and that price that we've locked in for the futures contract is at 59. So we say, well, $59 is what we're going to receive because we've locked in that price. That's going to be 59. We are receiving 59, but because we close out the position in August, we're going to close out the position by taking a long. We took a short to open the position, and we need to close it. To close it, we take a long, and we take a long in August. That long position is going to be at the August price, which is going to be 55. And because it's a long, we need to buy, so we need to subtract 55 from here, minus 55. In which case, this contract is closed. That contract is going to be closed with a profit of $4 per barrel. Now, we've still not sold, right? So we make a profit of $4 per barrel here, but this contract is closed now. We've still not made delivery of the million barrels. To make delivery of a million barrel, we just need to sell the oil out in the market, and we're going to sell the oil out in the market at the price of 55. So we're going to sell at 55 for a total of 59. This is the forward or the futures price. This price here, I deleted that. There we go. The first price that we have here is our short futures. The second price that we have here, I'm going to use that. The second price that we have here is our long futures, and that is in August. And the reason we know it is 55 is because we know that the convergence property says the price in August is going to be the futures price in August is going to be equal to the spot price in August, and the spot price in August is 55. So we know this is our short, right? That's what we have here, and we know this is our long. This essentially closes out the contract, but by closing out the contract, we don't make delivery of the line. We still need to sell out in the market. Now, the contract is closed out with a profit of 59 minus 55, that's $4. And then we turn around, we sell it in the market at 55 because that's the current price, 55. We've locked in the sales of 59. Okay, second scenario, what if the price in August is 65? Well, if the price in August is 65, what we're going to have is the following. We are going to do the same thing. One, we're going to take, we took a short position, and the short position doesn't change. It says 59. So we're going to sell and receive $59 per barrel, right? And we're going to close our position in August. To close our position in August, we need to take a long futures position in August. The long futures contract in August is going to be selling at whatever price it is that oil sells in August. In this case, oil is selling at $65 in August, which means that what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that long position. I'm going to have to pay should use a different color here. I'm going to have to pay $65 in August. By doing that, I closed out my contract. That's my contract. So short 59, that's my $59 there, and long 65. By doing that, what happens is I'm making a loss of $6 on the futures contract. Remember, this opened my contract. That was the short that I took back in May. And in August, to close out that contract and avoid the delivery, because we don't know who we're going to be matched with. Remember how the exchange works? We don't know who we're going to be matched with. To avoid having to take delivery on the line, what we do is we close out that contract. We close out that contract at whatever price the futures is trading, and that's the 65 there. So this close out our contract, we essentially lost $6 on our contract. Now we go out in the market and we sell. And we're going to sell at the actual price in the market, which is 65. So we're going to sell at 65. And when we sell at 65, what do we get? Well, we sold at 65 per barrel, but we've also lost $6 per barrel because of the contract. So ultimately, the net effect is to make sure that we're selling at 59. All right, so those are two examples of the long hedge using futures, and this is our example on the short hedge using futures. There is a caveat here, however. The first thing that we want to consider is, well, what if we understand that a futures contract is going to be closed out at expiration or at maturity, and we also understand that convergence property says that the futures price, so we open the contract here, and at expiration here we close out the contract. So we open here and then we close here. Now we close here at a futures price that is equal to the spot. That is what we did. That is the assumption that we took. Well, what if at this point here there is essentially nobody, there is no contract for you to take that would allow for you to be able to close out the position? What if there is no contract that's open for you at that point in time? What if the contract also expires here, but your actual purchase of oil or your actual sales occurs immediately after? So you're not purchasing the oil right now in May or whatever period it is, you're purchasing it a little later. What that does is that it leaves you with this period here where you are essentially unhedged. That is the first consideration. So with this, what we want to be able to make sure of is that if we indeed want to purchase or sell down the line at some point in the future, the hedge that we have to place has to have a maturity after the date at which we are considering purchasing down the line. That protects us, one, because we want to make sure that we can close the position because the contract is still trading, and two, also make sure that we are not unhedged. So the idea is essentially that if we're anticipating that, I'm going to clean this up, if we're anticipating a purchase, I'm going to say buy, if we're anticipating to buy at this point in the future, the actual hedge that we need to place has to have a maturity that's close to this date, but a little later than that. That should be the maturity of the futures. It should happen after the date at which you're considering purchasing down the line. Now, because it's going to happen after the date at which you're considering purchasing down the line, so that you avoid having a period where you're unhedged, and also you ensure that you can indeed close out the contract, because of that, we're creating a scenario where the futures price at this point, right? The futures price at this point where you're considering closing out the contract is not always going to be equal to the spot, because futures price is going to be equal to the spot at expiration. Remember, convergence tells us, convergence property says that the futures price at expiration is going to be equal to the spot, and that is at expiration. I say expiration, but you can also say maturity. Now, because we're now closing out the contract before expiration, this is expiration or maturity, but now because we're closing out before expiration, this is not always going to be true. And because these are going to be different, what we want to do is that creates a scenario where futures price is not going to be equal to spot price, and it creates an additional risk. That risk, the difference between the future spot price and the futures price, is what is known as basis risk. And so visually, this is what we have. Initially, we said the spot price is going to fluctuate something like that, and then we're going to have a futures price that's going to be something like this, actually. And at maturity, they are both going to converge to the same price, and so I can do this, and I say this is maturity. What I'm saying is, if we wait until maturity, we may not be able to close out the position. We may be asked to take delivery on the line or make delivery on the line. And so because there's a logistic problem with actually making delivery on the line, we want to be careful to close our position before expiration of the contract. And so if we're going to close the contract before expiration, that simply means that we're going to be closing the contract somewhere here before expiration. Now, remember, the white line here is our spot, so this is going to be our spot, and the yellow line there is going to be for a futures price, so that's going to be our futures. And so we're going to have a difference between the spot and the futures, and that is that difference here. That difference is what we know as basis. And basis is the difference between spot minus futures. And the uncertainty with respect to this difference is what we refer to as basis risk. And so let's go back to our slides here, and this is what we have. One, we looked at the two examples. The first example that we had was the scenario where we had a long hedge. The second example was a short hedge. We built on that to say, well, what if you wait all the way until expiration or maturity of the contract, and at that point there is no other party that's willing to take the opposite transaction, the opposite position to yours in order to allow you to close your position? What if you're unable to do that? Or what if your actual purchase of the underlying or your actual sales of the underlying is going to happen after the maturity of the contract? Well, what if that happens? You're unhedged for a period, or if you're unable to close out a position, you may be able to make delivery. You may have to make delivery or take delivery of the underlying. And that difference that we referred to earlier, is what we call basis, and the uncertainty with respect to that difference is what we refer to as basis risk. And so basis here is nothing else but the difference between the spot and futures at any point in time. And so that difference exists, that we are here closer to expiration or maturity, or we are here. So when we initiate the contract, there's a difference between the spot and futures. That's basis. So as time goes by, basis might increase. And when basis increase, we said we have a strengthening basis, or basis is strengthening. And if basis decrease, like here, so here is wide, that's a strengthening basis, and here is small, that's a weakening basis. So when the basis widens or the basis increase, we say that it is strengthening. And when the basis narrows or reduces, we say that it is weakening. And the uncertainty associated with basis is what we refer to as basis risk. And so here what we have is basis risk arises because of the uncertainty about the basis when the hedge is about to be closed out. So as soon as we're ready to close out, we are going to have to find what is the futures price at that point where we're closing out. Typically, we want that closing out point to be before maturity on the contract, which means that the futures price at the point where we want to close out our position is going to be, or is not going to be equal, or not necessarily going to be equal to the future spot price. So we can generalize the long hedge as follows. Well, what we have is a long hedge is when we want to purchase the asset in the future. That we know. Well, if we place a long hedge, what does that mean for us? Well, let's draw that out. A long hedge means that we want to purchase the asset at some point in the future. But we just said that we don't want to purchase the asset at the time when the hedge is closed out, right? Or at the time when the hedge expires or matures. We want to place our hedge with the maturity that is after the time at which we want to purchase. So if we want to purchase here, this is when we want to purchase, we want to place a hedge that has a maturity that is a little after that period at which we want to close. So this is when we want to, because it's a long, we want to buy, right? So we want to buy at that point, and therefore our hedge has to expire or mature a little bit after. Now, we're going to be buying the underlying there. So we want to place a hedge. We want to place that hedge today. So today we want to place that hedge. The hedge, the futures price that we're going to lock in today is going to be called F1. What does that mean? It means that at this point in the future, what we want to do is we're going to be paying F1 to purchase the underlying. So our cash flow is going to be minus F1 there. Minus F1. That's our cash flow because of this long hedge. Right? Now, we are closing out the contract before expiration, and at the time at which we're closing out the contract, which is the time at which we are purchasing the asset, the futures price is F2. So that futures price is going to be F2. Our long hedge say we're going to spend that much money. Our short hedge to close out the contract is going to be plus F2. What this does is it closes out my contract. Now, it is a long hedge. I still need to purchase the underlying in the future, so I still have to spend the price at which the underlying is trading in the market or selling in the market, and that price is S2. So we still have to spend S2 to purchase the underlying. And so ultimately, what do I have? Ultimately, what I have is I spend S2, but then my contract itself is going to generate the following. My contract itself is going to generate the following. It's going to be plus here I'm going to have F2 minus F1. That is my ultimate position. Now remember, this is what I'm spending because I closed out my contract, and this is what my the position that I have at the end of my contract, and that is the same as what we have here, F2 plus minus F1. So I just have F2 minus F1 here, and so this is my position in the option market, in the futures market, and this is how much I spend. Now I know this is overall is going to be a cost, right? Because that's what I'm spending. Now, to reflect it as a cost, I'm going to remember that as a cost. I'm going to multiply this whole thing by minus 1. And so if I multiply the whole thing by minus 1, what do I have? I have the following. I have S2 minus F2 minus F1, and that's essentially what we have here. That's what we have here. The difference between this and that we have here is the understanding that it is a cost. So this is the positive value of that cost. Now I can rewrite this a slightly different way. The way I would rewrite this is simply by saying, well, how about I get rid of those parentheses? So if I get rid of those parentheses, what am I going to get? What I'm going to get is S2 minus F2 plus F1. That is getting rid of those parentheses. And finally, I can rearrange this by putting the parentheses rather between these two. And so remember that basis is defined as the difference between the spot and the futures price. So this difference here is going to be called B2. And that B2 is going to be our basis. So it's going to be B2 plus F1, and that's what we have. That's what we have here. In the next video, what we're going to do, I'm going to stop here for now. In the next video, what we're going to do, we're going to go over a generalization for the short hedge, and then we're going to pick up from there to talk about scenarios where we actually don't have a contract that exists on the underlying that we are considering itself, and therefore we need to do what we refer to as cross hedging. And cross hedging is what we're going to be looking at in the next video. I'll see you in the next video.